This is the most important scene in Mr. Plow. This one. This episode does not work nearly as well without it. It's interesting, when I think about the second half of Mr. Plow with Barney's sudden character change, I would always kind of wonder how they get away with it. Barney's being a total scumbag right here, stealing Homer's ideas, and then just straight up sabotaging him. But Barney doesn't come off as bad as he probably should, even if it is kinda out of character. I wouldn't necessarily prescribe the label of jerk-ass Barney here being an actual problem for this episode. I think part of it is just how dang pathetic he's portrayed earlier. But I think this one joke, this one little bit of heartbreaking origin, really helps things along. I almost immediately go, okay, Homer kinda deserves this. And then I step out of Homer's shoes and start enjoying the rivalry for what it is. It's hard to be totally on Team Homer after seeing how he ruined Barney's life. This is Barney's first major role in an episode in the series. In other examples, he's just a bit player back at Moe's. But here's where he really gets involved in the plot. It's fun how we see both sides of Barney's character. This extremely pathetic side that we've kind of seen before, but then this also surprisingly ruthless side. A guy who, despite his appearance, isn't afraid to get down in the mud. But because it's still Barney, the whole thing ends up being super silly and fun. Of course Barney had been looking for a project to do with Linda Ronstadt. Why would this ever be in doubt? I really enjoy how game she is to do this dumb commercial, and being excited to come up with the Spanish version too. Homer is indeed un borracho. So much fun is had in this episode by just doing dumb commercials back and forth. Homer's first Mr. Plow commercial is definitely a highlight. I love its rawness, its sort of home movie quality to it. There's no professionalism here, they just kinda go with the one take they bothered to film, mistakes and all. Even with Bart just deliberately sabotaging the thing in the middle of filming. The whole thing comes together really nicely. The pretentious polish commercial they do later is also great. This is a moment I distinctly remember from watching it as a young child, just because I was so tickled by how nonsense it all was. This episode is a nice companion piece to Season 2's Oh Brother Where Art Thou, because of how much commentary there is about the auto industry. Whereas that episode looked at it more from the industry side of things, the auto manufacturer itself, Mr. Plow derives a lot of his humor from the consumer side, dealing with the mundane issues involved with car shopping. It's all very relatable stuff. I mean, Homer's not the first guy to ever crash his car after, being at a pornography store. He was buying pornography. Then we get a slew of hitchhiking, used car shopping, and auto show jokes. No, this kind of auto show. These kind of set pieces are the bread and butter of The Simpsons, an opportunity for the family members to disperse and experience one-off jokes. I love this odd joke about the crash test dummies from the dubious German outfit called Fourth Reich Motors. Just why? Adam West is obviously great right here, one of his first major appearances doing the self-parody we all know and love. He delivers the thing absolutely perfectly. It starts out so innocently, just this old gentleman excitedly sharing his memories, and then it goes on and on and on. It's so great how, in both appearances, they go for that slow Dutch angle. Really sells the hilarious insanity of these moments. He does bring up a good point, however. Why doesn't Batman dance anymore? The only people he dances for these days are Warner Brothers executives. Mr. Plow strikes me as one of the most quintessential Season 4 episodes, in that the humor starts getting really big and broad with its commercials and guest stars. Lots and lots of cutaway jokes as well. But the subject matter itself remains really down to earth. Just a guy who needed a car and bought a snowplow. They keep it really simple, the story always stays with Homer. But they don't go for something like Dancin' Homer in Season 2, where they make it about a personal character journey. It's just Homer trying to solve a problem, and trying to be successful at something. It's very functional, very goal-oriented. It's a nice change of pace seeing Homer actually succeeding at a business. I don't know how he really pulls it off, given his advertising tactics, but he somehow gets there. Maybe it's because there really are a lot of alcoholics, the unemployable, and angry loners in Springfield. Now Marge loves Homer's success, and she most certainly loves that jacket. You might say Marge loves being with Mr. Plow. Mr. Plow is good at his job. Mr. Plow will plow her driveway for free. Okay, I'll stop now. I could imagine the ending of this episode being somewhat controversial for people who dislike the wacky and unrealistic side of The Simpsons. I mean, we have the car going across this rickety bridge, and then the radio dial joke, and then basically God himself stepping in to ruin their plans. Yeah, I guess this is one of the more aggressively silly final acts in the show at this point in the series. It's a little like Marge vs. the Monorail in that regard, another Season 4 entry. But I don't mind that they lean so hard on the cartoon logic in this one. Maybe if the whole thing was a more character-driven affair, it would come off as tonally jarring. The rivalry plot in Act 2 segues nicely into an adventure set piece for the climax. Therefore, doing the adventure elements in a subversive way fits the show nicely. I wouldn't want them to do these sort of scenes straight. The radio dial joke is really ridiculous, so I do get why people might dislike it, however. Despite this crazy stuff at the end, Mr. Plow is another one of those Simpsons staples that rolls around in the mundane and somehow elevates it. I mean, we're talking about two dudes plowing driveways. That's pretty dull material. But somehow, like, every single scene works. Oh sure, you can see where they cheat in the episode. This one's really guilty about jamming in lame voiceover lines during transitions. And maybe that joke about the mountain goat isn't that great. But those are obviously very minor nitpicks. There is a surprising amount of variety for this premise. So many different kinds of jokes they just throw in. They look at every possible angle and reaction that could result from this plot. It's like an episode about plowing driveways with barely any plowing driveways. Kiss my asphalt. Mr. Plow is one of the show's all-time great episodes, being just as good today as when it first aired. It's arguably even better today, given that half the content has turned into funny internet memes by now. And if this episode helped kickstart the Adam West Renaissance in the 1990s and 2000s, then that's just an added bonus. Thank you, Mr. Plow, and thank you, Adam West.